Hi, my name is Todd Cole. I am here to welcome you to my neighborhood in my own classroom at Westminster College to talk about my top picks for 2022. Here we go. My number one is Mr. Rogers' Gift of Music. It talks about how music helped him as a child all the way through his adulthood when he was on television in his neighborhood. And he would talk about how music would help him deal with his feelings as a child and as an adult. Do you know when he was angry, and yes, he did get angry, he would pound out his emotions on his piano. And eventually it would turn into something beautiful. So Mr. Rogers' Gift of Music is one of my top picks, and that's why I'm wearing this hat, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Okay, the next two are partners. Most of you probably know Make Way for Ducklings. It won the Caldecott Medal in 1942 by Robert McCloskey, and he did the text and the illustrations. But did you know the story behind the story? And so Mr. McCloskey's Marvelous Mallards, the making of Make Way for Ducklings, was written and published in 2022. And it talks about how he lived in a small studio apartment and he brought ducklings into his apartment to live with him. He would watch them underneath his table and get down close to them so he could see their mannerisms and their eyes and how they walked and how they swam in his bathtub. So he really took the drawings of Make Way for Ducklings very seriously by inviting them into his own studio apartment. So Mr. McCloskey's Marvelous Mallards. Read the book first and then read how it all happened. 1942, 2022. Okay. Farmhouse. I love this book. It's an old farmhouse, and the woman who wrote it, Sophie Blackhall, is a two-time Caldecott winner. And she looks at this abandoned farmhouse and imagines what it was like when it was filled with 12 siblings years and years ago, and how they played and laughed and cried and learned and just lived together in this farmhouse. I think it could become a winner for the Caldecott again because the illustrations are amazing. Speaking of amazing, this one too has bright and colorful pictures and illustrations. One Boy Watching, and it's by Grant Snyder. And it's just about a boy who's traveling on his bus number 4 that takes him to and from school, and all the things he sees along the way, from train tracks to farm fields. And everything in between, but the illustrations are so bright. Look at that. Isn't that nice? And the text is really quite simple on each page. If not even a sentence, it could be a phrase. Uncle John's City Garden. Another one of my favorites because it's based on a true story of a family who grows a garden in the city, and how it's just a huge celebration within the family. And it's a celebration of love and food, because once it is all harvest, the family shares it with the entire community. Uncle John's City Garden. The next one, we all love fairy tales, and this is The Three Billy Goats Gruff. And it's illustrated by John Klassen, who's a very famous illustrator and has won several awards, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins again. But did you know that Three Billy Goats Gruff was not a book when it first was told? It was told at story times, read-alouds, but nothing to show. And as one person told it, another person who listened went and told the story again, and so on and so on and so on, and it changed a little bit each time. And so this is the latest version after it has turned into a book, and some of the things that happen in here you may not recognize from the way you know the Three Billy Goats Gruff, but I can see it as a winner in 2022 too. Berry Song, the story of a grandmother and her granddaughter who walk through a forest and pick berries, and they sing as they do it. And they pick, I think it's 11 different types of berries, and within the book it lists the berries and what kind they are and how they taste and so forth. So you're learning as well as sharing a special story that's based on something true that happened. And it's a Caldecott medalist who wrote it, Michaela Goad. Love this one because it's by one of my favorite authors, Jacqueline Woodson, who's written children's books, picture books, as well as novels. The Year We Learned to Fly. Listen to this. A must-have book about the power of one's voice and the friendship that emerge when you are yourself. A story about a grandmother who gives advice to her grandkids who are very bored one day, and she just tells them to close their eyes and let your imagination flow, because there was someone who was just as bored as you who made something come to life that was very, very special. So The Year We Learned to Fly by Jacqueline Woodson. Love this one. I don't know if it's going to win anything, but I found it in a independent bookstore in Vermont called Good Night Little Bookstore. So a great story to read as your child is in bed and you want to do a good night story. But things like good night glasses and hat, like Because They Were Left Behind, and good night bookstore cat. I know a friend of mine who had a bookstore and he had a cat of his own, and everybody came in and petted it, and it was a big cat, I think like 23 pounds. But they're always nice to have in a bookstore. So she says goodnight to all the different things in the bookstore. Nellie versus Elizabeth, a true story of two women journalists who one person goes one way and the other woman goes the other way to travel around the earth, and they hope to do it within 80 days. And it's a race. But do they really care who wins? Not really. They're out to show that women can travel around the earth just like the men who traveled in 80 days. So Nellie versus Elizabeth. I Am Golden. A story of a beautiful girl who is Asian, and her parents talk about what they see in her and what should she see when she looks in the mirror. An ode to the immigrant experience and a manifesto for Chinese American joy. Listen to this. Do you see beauty? We see eyes that point toward the sun, that give us the warmth and joy of 1,000 rays when you smile. We see hair and inky black and smooth as a peaceful night sky. We see skin brushed with gold. I am golden. We are better together. A story of a community who is better when they work together. And it's really an environmental story about how when we work together, we can help climate change and recycling and so forth. So one person doing it, yeah, it makes a difference. But when we all gather to do it too, even more important, we are better together. Love this one by Jen Bryant. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Based on a true story of a girl who wanted to become a doctor, but at the time, women were not being accepted into the medical field. So she decides to become a lawyer and change that law. And she did. It's the fight for Title IX. So it's written by Jen Bryant, who came to Westminster a couple of years via Zoom because it was happening during the pandemic. She lives on the other side of Pennsylvania, and I really appreciate the topics that she chooses to write about. Ablaze with Color, the story of a painter named Elma Thomas. She's an African-American woman. She's the first African-American woman who has a solo exhibit in New York City, and she's the first woman American artist to have a painting put on display in the White House during the Obama years. She unfortunately didn't get to see it happen because she had passed away before it was placed there. But it's the story of how she came to be. Ablaze with Color, a story of painter Elma Thomas. Cleo Wade wrote, What the Road Said. Very similar to Oh, the Places You Go. You know, if I turn this way, is something going to happen that's good? Or if I turn this way, is something that's going to happen that's bad? And it's just giving you the courage to take that step forward. And if you make a mistake, you'll learn from your mistake. What the road said. So the road is talking and telling the story. Love this one. What are words really? And it's written by Alexei Lembrowski and illustrated by Carls Aponte. Listen to the sleeve. What are words really? Are they just random letters arranged in different ways? Or do they have magical powers that can inspire and amaze? Words have power. The power to hurt or to help and heal. To make someone feel small or to make someone feel tall. So how words can be used in a good way, but we need to be reminded that words can be used in a bad way too. Finally, All Our Neighbors. And it's a sequel to All Are Welcome. So it reminds me a lot of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Listen to the inside. Come along with the characters featured in the beloved bestseller All Are Welcome and Big Feelings as we introduce a new friend to a community with everyone who has a place and is loved and appreciated no matter what. Now, at the very end, it opens up to a poster. We are all neighbors. I like that. Do you? So those are my top children's picture books for 2022. I'm sure you have different ones. Maybe you have some of them that are the same. But remember to just keep on reading. I think of kids who are struggling, who may do naughty things or bad things. And I always wish they had a book in their hand. And maybe that would help them to find a purpose and find help and healing. So read, read, read a book, travel anywhere, worldwide. You decide a book will take you there. Thanks for listening.